I was thinking last night when Massie lost in Kentucky, I was thinking back to Trump's inauguration, the morning of the Trump inauguration, which amazingly was only last January 20th. And I was in Washington for that, and Trump invited me to church on the morning before he was sworn in. And so, of course, I went. And it was at St. John's, the Episcopal Church in Lafayette Square, where pretty much every president has gone on the morning of the inauguration. So I showed up. Happens to be my denomination, the Episcopal Church. So I know the church pretty well. I know people who work there. So I was pretty excited about going and saying a prayer for this presidency. So I'm standing outside at maybe 6:45 in the morning, and it is freezing. And if you've been to Washington in the winter, you know it's mostly pretty temperate, but the cold days are very cold. And there's something about the cold in a city that is biting. Even if you like cold, it's tough. And this was probably 12 degrees and windy. And I remember that very well because we were standing in line, in a security line, waiting to go through the magnetometer. And the Secret Service was there. There was a whole rigmarole and dogs, and they were taking forever. It's not their fault, but the protocols are complex. And it was awful standing there. We were kind of stamping our feet and grousing. Not many people. It was a pretty small church service, but the people who were standing in line were like, let's get going and get into church. And as we're standing there feeling freezing, waiting to be searched by federal law enforcement, a woman brushed by me on the left side, kind of walking fast. Older woman, not very tall, and I recognized her. And it was Miriam Adelson. And she blew past me and everybody else in line and went right to the front, right to the magnetometer, announced who she was, and walked on in. And I thought to myself, Miriam Adelson, who I know vaguely, not really, but I knew that she was the biggest or one of the biggest donors to the Trump campaign. An Israeli, born in Israel, widow of Sheldon Adelson, the biggest Republican donor, the casino magnate, but more than anything, a fervent neocon. Her main issue is American support for Israel. She says this, it's not a secret, and she spends accordingly. And she brushes past me, I remember thinking this, and everybody else, and just walks right in like she owns the place. And I remember thinking, I hope this isn't an omen. I hope it's not a sign of things to come. It feels a little bit like a metaphor. I hope that's not real. So I kind of sublimated it, tried not to think about it, finally got into church, sat alone in a pew with Charlie Kirk, had a great time. We were both almost jubilant, really, that Trump had been elected. We didn't think he would, but he did. And we were thrilled, not just because we like Trump, which we did, because he's hilarious and fun to talk to and interesting. And
you're starting a business and you don't want to spend weeks designing a logo? You need to see this. So this is design.com. Just type in your...
But because he ran on ideas that we agreed with really strongly. And first among them was the idea, self-evident really, that the U.S. government ought to serve, in fact, it exists to serve the interests of American citizens. And it really has no other role in the world. Doesn't mean it has to strike a bellicose posture toward anyone else. Hurting other people isn't necessary. But helping your own people is the only reason you exist if you're the U.S. government or one of its many employees. And the American president should proceed from that commitment. I am here to serve my people, as a father does with his children, an officer with his men, etc. That's leadership. Service to the people you lead and a love for those people. And both of us were convinced at the time that Donald Trump was that man, that he was truly America first. And because he was, this would be a great moment for our country, a much needed relief from a worldview that put America at the bottom.
So just one thing that really caught me is I think it's a dangerous slippery slope for sure when he says that being the president is like a father with his kids. Like, I think that could be dangerous because what it is, in my opinion, is that you serve the people and you kind of should be working for us. So I don't think that it's the same dynamics as a father with his children. But I don't know. What do you think about that, guys? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Like, do you think that your president should be like a father figure to you? Or should he be there to just do his job, which is to administer things? Let's talk about it, guys.
Of its concerns, but that would also change the Republican Party, which was meaningful because the Republican Party, along with Trump, had just taken total control of the country. Both houses in Congress, House and Senate, the White House, majority of the Supreme Court appointed by Republicans. The Republicans were in charge, and we hoped, and at the moment we believed, that the Republican Party would change along with Trump, its new leader, and that it would change in one specific way. It would come to put the concerns of Americans first. Period. That's it. We can argue about how best to serve them, but serving them has to be the goal. And so we imagine, Charlie Kirk and I, we may have talked about this in the pew, that we would see the Republican Party suddenly populated by a lot of people like Thomas Massie. I can't remember if we actually talked about Thomas Massie, but we had before, and Charlie Kirk had talked a lot about Thomas Massie. And Charlie Kirk loved Thomas Massie, not just as a person because he was honest and decent, but because Thomas Massie's orientation was purely about what's best for the country. And again, he said it many times, including in this representative interview of Thomas Massie. Here's Charlie Kirk.
He loves liberty. He's honest and he's tough, and he's going to really go after the intel agencies. It's Thomas Massie, who's just terrific, from Kentucky. Congressman Massie, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Charlie.
This might sound like a strange question, but I know it's on everybody's mind. You're going to be on the committee that will oversee the most powerful institutions on the planet, the FBI, the CIA, maybe the IRS. Are you concerned for your own safety and or what they might try to do to blackmail you?
Oh, absolutely. By the way, you're not qualified to be on this committee if you don't realize that there will be an effort to discredit me.
It's poignant and honestly kind of fascinating in retrospect to hear Charlie Kirk express alarm at the behavior of the intel agencies. Are you afraid they're going to kill you or blackmail you? He says to Thomas Massie. Charlie Kirk was thinking about that.
It is the go-to pan for any chef that's doing high heat
So
cooking.
what do you guys think about that? What do you guys think about the Thomas Massie
Even
issue?
then.
Like, do you guys agree, do you guys have anything to say about the Thomas Massie losing his seat in Congress? And what do you think that had to do with? I for one, I have some suspicions, which I'm gonna keep it to myself, and we'll keep playing the Tucker Carlson show here. But I want to hear from you guys in the chat. What do you think was responsible for Thomas Massie losing his seat? Or what do you think at least contributed the most to it?
It was only 8 months after the inauguration, less than, that Charlie Kirk, of course, was murdered, assassinated in public in a very, very strange shooting. And at around the same time, Donald Trump pivoted from the promises that we at the time believed to become something completely different. It would have been unimaginable for us sitting in those pews at St. John's across from the White House on the morning of the inauguration to picture Donald Trump covering up the Epstein files, encouraging more secrecy, encouraging more surveillance, more spying on Americans, to be encouraging data centers across the country to abet that surveillance. And above all, it would have been stunning for us. In fact, we wouldn't have been able to comprehend it that morning in January of last year, that Donald Trump would be cheerleading a regime change war in the Middle East against Iran, of all Middle Eastern nations, the biggest and most powerful. Because both of us understood the point of Donald Trump, and the reason that we supported him was because he would never do anything like that. That morning,
Guys, let's talk about this actually. What do you guys think happened to Donald Trump? Because honestly, I believe that at one point he seemed to have America's and Americans' best interest at heart. But somewhere along the line, something happened. Do you guys think it's the Epstein files, something to do with that? Do you think that our boy is being blackmailed? And that's why he's just kind of taking a 180 on his true supporters. I don't know what happened to him, but he definitely seems like he's turned. A part of me also suspects that he's always been like this and part of the whole gang. But then how do you explain the way they really tried to stop him from winning that election? Right? They even made attempts at his life. So I don't know how you can explain that. It doesn't really make sense to me. But I'm curious, why would they want to stop him so badly from being president if they know that he's going to have their back, right? So I think something changed somewhere along the lines with DJT. But anyways, let's talk about it in the chat, guys.
the morning of the inauguration, both Charlie Kirk and I believed that Donald Trump had meant what he said in speech after speech, in public, in conversations with us, endless conversations with both of us on this exact topic. And so if you're trying now to remember the Donald Trump that we thought was real on the morning of the inauguration, here's a reminder. This is a speech that Trump gave in 2020.
Biden shipped away our jobs, threw open our borders, and sent our youth to fight in these crazy, endless wars. And it's one of the reasons the military, I'm not saying the military is in love with me, the soldiers are. The top people in the Pentagon probably aren't, because they want to do nothing but fight wars so that all of those wonderful companies that make the bombs and make the planes and make everything else stay happy. Let's bring our soldiers back home.
Give me 1 minute and you'll get rid of this stuff forever. Liquid detergent is up to...
So much for bringing the soldiers back home, right? So much for bringing the soldiers back home.
80%
like, he's literally
which is
doubling
kind of
down.
crazy when you think about how much money...
He's literally doubling down.
Some people don't like to come home.
So DJT is literally doubling down right now. So that's what I mean by the total 180, right? He seemed to be like, bring them back home, bring them back home. But now, like, there's never been a bigger warmonger than him. So I think something happened with DJT. I think the guys might have been compromised somewhere along the line.
Some people like to continue to spend money. One cold-hearted globalist betrayal after another, and that's what it was.
One cold-hearted globalist betrayal after another. That's what it was. And he was right. That's exactly what it was. One cold-hearted globalist betrayal after another. Betrayals of the United States and its future, the future of our children, including the children that your children may not have because of those betrayals. Charlie Kirk was very upset about this. He was articulate in explaining why he was upset about it. And he sincerely believed that Trump would change it. Trump and people like Thomas Massie. It's hard to imagine what he would think about the remarks that Donald Trump, the same man that he voted for and campaigned for and went to pray for in the church the morning of the inauguration, what he would have thought of the Donald Trump on display yesterday when he said this. Watch.
I'm right now at 99% in Israel. I could run for prime minister. So maybe after I do this, I'll go to Israel, run for prime minister. I had a poll this morning. I'm 99%. So that's good.
The president of the United States.
Imagine that, though. Like, imagine being elected, or like, imagine getting a job as like as a CEO of a company. And then you're like bragging about like how you could go to another company and they would treat you probably better. Like, what do you think the current company you're with would do? Like, I don't know why it seems like as a president, you can just say whatever you want, act however you want with like no consequences. Like, why is that the case with presidents? You would think that with higher responsibilities and power, then they should be even held to higher standards and higher standards of accountability. So why does it seem to be that it's less? And then we, like the populace, we can't even step out of line a little bit. Like, we'll quickly be slapped back into place. So I guess like that's just how it is, right? It's a power, right? It's a world of power. So the most powerful just climb over everybody else and thump their chest, pretty much.
States bragging about his popularity in a foreign country. I'm 99% in Israel. Unmentioned is the fact that he's 35% in the United States. 35% support from Americans, the people he pledged to represent, to fight for, whose side he promised to take in every conflict, foreign and domestic. And yet there he is, bragging about how popular he is in a foreign country. The same country that got us into the war that is causing, to some extent, his unpopularity in this country. Speaking of cold-hearted globalist betrayals. Now you can say, well, that's just Trump searching for affirmation wherever he can. Unpopular at home, he retreats into the fantasy of his popularity in another country. Well, yes, true. But it's not a one-time exhibition of this. That president has spent the last year looking outward toward the approval of other nations. That president has spent the last year fighting for people who are not his voters, and in many cases not even Americans, and allowing his own country to languish. The last year has not made America great again. The last year has diminished American power at a rate some of us thought was unimaginable. We couldn't have foreseen, less than a year and a half ago, sitting in St. John's, the damage that this.
It's true. Like, I mean, if you look at what has happened now with the US, like, I think most of their allies don't trust them anymore. And a lot of that trust was broken in the last year, right? Look at the EU allies, the North American allies. Pretty much everybody is wary right now of the US, because we know that all it takes is just one rogue person in there and then everything could go downhill. So is that really where you want to like really put your bet on? You know, so it's not only about like the fact that everything is now so much more expensive, but just look at the relationships and like the way he's changed the perceived moral superiority that like America always prided itself on. I don't think anybody in their right senses right now can really play the moral superior card anymore after what we've seen.
Administration led by that president, for whom we campaigned and liked personally, could do to this country.
The way you see an idea in your mind. The way.
How did this happen? Well, historians are going to have to figure that out. What was the change? Was Donald Trump a sleeper cell the entire time, working on behalf of Benjamin Netanyahu while pretending to be an America First patriot? Maybe. Hard to imagine that. This is someone who tends to externalize everything, who tends to say what he's thinking, probably doesn't have the self-control to be a long-term sleeper agent. And so if that's true, if Trump really did change completely, not just by 6 degrees, but by 180 degrees, what caused the change? What was the moment where Donald Trump decided, I really don't care?
So I'm going to have to push back on Tucker here just a little bit, right? Because I seem to remember that Trump never made it a secret his support for Israel. I believe even at one point, he even criticized Biden for being too soft and like was saying that Israel should just go ahead and just destroy their enemies pretty much. Check it out, actually. So Trump has never made it a secret that he loves Israel. So I think anybody that voted for him needed to have known that Israel was going to get full back-end from him, right? I think what happened here is that they were thinking he was just going to pull out of all the wars, pull out America's support from Ukraine, right? But now I think he's kind of done that right now, helping Russia even more while starting a whole new thing. And I think these guys had to have seen this coming. Like, I doubt that someone as smart as Tucker Carlson didn't know that Trump was going to support Israel. Tell me, like, literally he has a son-in-law that is literally like a Jewish person, a Jewish son-in-law. So I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? It's not a secret that he loves Israelis. Let's face facts here.
What the people who voted for me think. In fact, I don't think I like them very much. And what I really care about is what a foreign prime minister and some widowed casino magnate think of me. Who knows what caused that change? But the change is demonstrable. When did you first notice? I'll tell you when I first noticed. It was last summer. And the spark wasn't the war with Iran. It was the Epstein files. Why the Epstein files? Well, out of nowhere, the president, who had effectively told his voters that he would declassify the Epstein files, along with the files pertaining to all kinds of controversial and much discussed events around which conspiracy theories have grown, notably the JFK assassination, but not just that, all of them. There's too much secrecy in the federal government. That's what the president, the now president, said again and again. Why is there secrecy? Because secrecy hides corruption. You can't be corrupt in the open, of course. You need to be shielded by secrecy. And by the way, this is a president who was indicted and threatened with the rest of his life in prison for violating secrecy laws. Secrecy laws which were not written to protect American national security, of course not, and they haven't. They didn't prevent Jonathan Pollard from stealing our key military secrets and giving them to the Israeli government, which promptly gave them to the Soviets, that didn't help at all. No, those laws were written to prevent you, the people who pay for the federal government, from learning what the federal government is actually doing. Secrecy abets corruption. It's obvious. None of this can thrive in sunlight. It dies, famously. And so the pledge, the promise, the core promise behind America First and Drain the Swamp and every other slogan, all of which I loved, I'll just say it, and love to this day, the pledge behind all of those was to let people know what their own government is doing, both because they have a right to know and because once they do know, the corruption will stop. It's about corruption.
Right. Like, wasn't this even the same administration? Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong, but didn't they have like isn't that what DOGE was, like Department of Government Efficiency? And didn't they have like a corruption unit as well? Anti-corruption unit as well? So this was supposed to be the presidency with the most transparency, right? Like open house, press conferences. He literally had a press conference with Zelensky and he aired it out. Like everybody could see that while he humiliated Zelensky. We all saw that's and everybody lauded him. We're like, wow, like this is such a transparent president, right? He's a transparent guy. Like everybody sees how the spaghetti is made, they said. Well, where is that transparency now when it comes to like the Epstein files? I really think that like that's where they have our boy. I think that's where they have him for sure. But what do you guys think? Do you think that like that's what this whole thing is about? Because I mean, well, I don't know. I don't know anymore. I don't know what to make of this year. Like the 180, I pretty much have like whiplash, whiplash with DJT. He's the king of whiplash.
It's about a justice system that does not treat every person as a citizen, much less a child of God, but treats them as members of castes. And members of some castes have to obey the law and members of other castes don't. There's not equal treatment under the law. Therefore, there is no justice. Therefore, the most basic promise of America, which is that you will be judged by what you do, is invalid. And so is democracy itself. How can you vote for things if you don't know what they are? Well, you can't. You have no control in a world where the most important facts are hidden from you. And that obvious observation, which spoke not just to Republicans, but to a lot of non-Republicans, famously, people who made up the Trump 2024 coalition, that promise was the promise. The government will work for you and you alone, and you will know that because you're going to know what the government is doing. Because, of course, foreign lobbying of your government or lobbying by big pharma or lobbying by anybody of your government is by definition corruption because it gives more weight to the preferences of a small group of people than to the majority. It's a betrayal. It's a corruption of democracy. It is corruption.
We built a $49 garden hose nozzle that makes every pressure washer on the market completely unnecessary. Every pressure washer has the same fundamental flaw, and nobody was fixing it. You see, pressure washers all...
And there is probably no figure in modern history who embodies corruption more perfectly than Jeffrey Epstein. Not because he was the worst person who ever lived. He wasn't. He was just an employee in a much larger structure. He wasn't making independent decisions. Come on now. But he got away with it. Jeffrey Epstein somehow won Powerball.
Yeah. So do you guys think that any of these people are actually acting by themselves? Or do you think that they're all like there's someone behind them just kind of moving the pieces around the chessboard? I really don't think that any of these people, I think these are just the front men. But I think the real people calling the shots, they're actually behind the scenes. Not shadow people. And not reptilian people. No. You heard nothing from me.
In the state of Oklahoma and collected almost $30 million. Jeffrey Epstein won Powerball. Okay, now. How'd that happen? Wasn't from Oklahoma. No one's ever explained how he won. The feds looked into it. No explanation. He just somehow collected almost $30 million from Powerball. Okay, now. So what's the lesson there? The lesson and the reason it's funny is because the system is rigged. And everyone knows it's rigged. And Epstein proves that it's rigged. And at some point it was rigged apparently against Epstein. How do we know that? Well, because on July 6th, 2019, he was arrested at Teterboro Private Airport outside New York City on a flight from Paris. And he was charged with basically the same crimes he'd been charged with back in 2006 by the state of Florida. Now, you would think that that would be not allowed, double jeopardy. Well, the feds made the case. Well, those were state charges. These are federal charges, but he had a federal non-prosecution agreement. It's not a defense of Jeffrey Epstein, of course. It's merely noting the obvious, which is what the Justice Department did to Jeffrey Epstein in 2019 was very weird. And no one has ever explained why they did that. But what we do know is that a month and 3 days after he was arrested at Teterboro Airport, he was dead. And he was murdered. That's obvious. And it was never investigated. That's a fact. So what does that add up?
So like, how weird is that? Don't tell me that like a country as advanced as the United States of America, like you have someone assassinated while inside of prison or jail, whatever, and then like they can't find out who did that. I mean, I never heard that they found who did that. So y'all let me know in the chat. Like, did they ever find out who did that? Or did I just kind of get swept under the carpet? Weird.
Too. Well, I don't know. Draw your own conclusions. Here you have a guy who's entangled with multiple intel agencies from a bunch of different countries, notably the United States and Israel, but also British intelligence, probably the French, the usual panoply. And he's running around the world as an arms dealer and a connector, and he's got some relationship to 9/11. What is that? And he wins Powerball. He's operating at the highest levels. He's not running anything, but he's operating at those levels, and he knows a lot. And one day, he is summoned back from Paris and arrested, and a month later, he's murdered. So it stands to reason that anyone involved in any of that probably had direct involvement in his murder.
Ça chauffe côté spéciaux cette semaine chez Métro. Avec le bœuf haché maigre à 5.
No one ever asked these questions. That's not considered interesting because it's not related to sex. But it may be a little bit closer to the heart of why this is such a touchy subject for this administration. Because keep in mind, Donald Trump was president in 2019. And it was his Attorney General Barr, the son, strangely, of the man who had given Jeffrey Epstein his first job teaching at the Dalton School and then helped get him a job at Bear Stearns and then launched him into whatever world he occupied until he was murdered under the authority of Attorney General Barr. Kind of weird. Well, so weird that at very least it demands an explanation, which we've never received. In any case, probably not going to receive one anytime soon because the president who could explain it was remarkably touchy about the subject. Very, very touchy. And whenever it came up, and this was a shock to a lot of his supporters, he didn't just brush it off and say, oh yeah, we'll get to that after we fixed the economy and lowered gas prices and made it possible for your son to get a job. No. His response was, well, hysterical. Shut up! Anyone who asks about Epstein is not my supporter, and I don't want your support. He said that in a Truth Social post at the time, last summer. Look it up.
He did say that, yeah, he did.
And so for those of us who campaigned for Trump and voted for him and liked him, the first thought was, what is this? Isn't the whole point of your administration to drain the swamp? Isn't this why you got elected? So you could end this two-tiered system where some people get to molest kids and win Powerball in Oklahoma and everything's fine until they're murdered somehow, but no one can ever figure out how. And the rest of us who get arrested for having 3 beers and driving to 7-Eleven. Get arrested because you make a mistake on your tax form. Not all of us have a Department of Justice ordered respite from federal audits. Some of us are subject to federal audits and know that we'll get them if we step out of line. So it would be nice, and again, this was the promise of the campaign and of the administration and the reason that some of us filed into church, though behind Miriam Adelson, on that cold morning a year and a half ago. Why would Donald Trump shut down any, not just investigation into, but any conversation about the guy who embodies the corruption he was elected to end? That thought has never left my mind and probably the mind of a lot of other people. Was Trump involved in some weird sex thing? Probably not, actually. That might be better than the actual answer.
I don't know, man. I don't know if he was or wasn't. Like, I'm not gonna say anything, but I just say like, let's have the unredacted names and let's have some accountability. That's all. And let's investigate it actually and look into it at the very least.
And the actual answer may be that Donald Trump is covering up for exactly the people he was elected to expose. So that was the moment. Well, apparently, Thomas Massie didn't get the memo that is totally off limits. Talk about whatever you want. You can make fun of Kamala Harris's teeth, but you don't talk about Epstein.
Also, honestly, I don't know if you guys have looked at that, like that list, but I have. And let me just say that, like, if you search for DJT's name on there, it appears quite a number of times. And it's quite disturbing, the things that were being alleged against him. But that's like nothing is proven. It's just that for sure his name is there. And I hear them a lot of times saying, my name is not there. He keeps saying his name is not there. But actually, his name is there. His name is there, bro.
Because the whole point of the Republican Party is to make sure that we don't talk about Epstein. Isn't that right? Isn't that why you became a Republican? Thomas Massie didn't get the memo, and he started saying in his kind of autistic, forthright way, what about Epstein?
Looking for a stunning logo? Design.com is the world's #1 AI logo generator with the massive...
I want to know about Epstein. And rather than just brush him off or blow him off or ignore him, Donald Trump fixated on him and began to hate Thomas Massie. And in a move that may reveal what the Epstein story is really about, he made common cause with some of his biggest donors. Those would include Paul Singer. Paul Singer, a liberal who is somehow one of the biggest donors in the Republican Party, and John Paulson, and of course, Miriam Adelson. And they colluded, in effect, to destroy Thomas Massie. Now, Thomas Massie, in addition to calling for more disclosure of the Epstein documents, which, by the way, belong to the citizens of the United States. They aren't the personal property of any federal bureaucrat. They belong to the people of the country.
I feel like, is it just me, or like did the Epstein thing just kind of go under the radar with the whole Iran thing? I think that like that has to do with that as well, right? Just to kind of distract people from that. But it's kind of crazy how we just moved on from that. Isn't it crazy how we just kind of moved on from that Epstein list right there? Because I mean, like Tucker said, like people have the right to know, right? Like it's not like as if they get to just decide, like we're gonna redact all the names, you know? Like no, like we the populace, we the people, like we want to see the names, and they should be bringing the names, like because at the end of the day, like they are here to serve us, so it's not theirs to keep. So I don't understand how the whole dynamics. I don't know where we got it wrong, but this whole thing where like now we're the ones serving. It's backwards.
Who also, by the way, own the federal detention center in which Epstein was murdered and are therefore owed an explanation of who murdered him and why hasn't that person been arrested. In any case, Thomas Massie demanded this. But Thomas Massie also had another distinction, another asterisk by his name. Out of 217 Republicans in the Congress, Thomas Massie is the only one who's never taken money from the Israeli lobby. He's the only one. And Thomas Massie has never been opposed to Israel in any sense. You can search the archive for Thomas Massie attacking Israel or Jews or anything on the topic. Doesn't seem that interested. Thomas Massie's position is a principled one and a consistent one going back decades. The United States has a lot of problems, and maybe first among them is a debt problem. The United States is bankrupt, beyond bankrupt. The United States is so deeply in debt that its creditors are worried. And we cannot afford to send any more foreign aid to anyone. That would include Egypt. And it would very much include the largest recipient of foreign aid by far, which is Israel, which is not strategically important.
Let me just say that by saying that like the U.S. shouldn't be giving any more money to Israel or to anybody really, it doesn't make you anti-Semitic, right? It doesn't mean that you're saying that go and like destroy Israel. No, it just means that the U.S. has their own things to take care of. Charity begins at home, like fix your home first. And then when you have and you're all balanced at home, then you can reach out to people. That's all it means. It doesn't mean that you're anti-Semitic.
The United States in any sense. We receive nothing of value from Israel, nothing. And when you compare whatever tech we receive, the spyware on our phones, against the cost in dead Americans and in American dollars, and in the total isolation now of the United States, which is in part the result of our alliance with Israel, it's not a good deal for us. And so Thomas Massie has stood alone all of these years. He's made zero headway in stopping aid to Israel or in even changing minds about Israel. But he has persisted in his lonely, principled campaign against foreign aid. And so because of that, Trump colluded with three of his donors, including his biggest, Miriam Adelson, to destroy Thomas Massie and to end his career in Congress by beating him in the Republican primary in the 4th District of Kentucky, a place we can bet Miriam Adelson has never been to and could not find on a map, and in which she has no real interests. And that makes you wonder, well, why would she and her fellow neocon billionaires spend tens of millions of dollars to kick Thomas Massie out of the Congress? And of course, because Israel. That's it. Thomas Massie criticized not Israel, but America's relationship with Israel, and that can't be allowed.
So pardon me for asking this question, guys. Pardon me here. But don't you vote for the Congress person? Don't you vote for who you want to represent you in Congress? So does that mean that they voted against Congressman or former Congressman Massie? Or is Tucker saying that it was rigged? What is he saying here? Because if the people voted him out, then maybe they have other concerns. Why? Maybe they had other issues with Thomas Massie that we don't know about. But really, do you vote for the congressman? I believe you do, right?
What's interesting is that it wasn't just Trump, and it wasn't just his donors, Miriam Adelson and Paul Singer and Paulson and the rest. It was the entire American news media, left and right. Here's CBS News interviewing Thomas Massie about his race in really one of the remarkable clips of the past month. Watch this.
Personne n'échappe au passager.
Le passager.
Okay, I probably shouldn't say this here, but see how perfect this looks? It's not by accident. These big grocery chains don't want you seeing this, but watch what happens.
There have been more than $32 million spent on a primary in this congressional district, which is now the most expensive House primary ever in the United States. Is it worth it?
You'd have to ask Miriam Adelson on May 20th if it was worth it. Because, they tried to buy my vote for 14 years and it was never for sale. Now they're trying to buy a seat here in Kentucky.
That kind of criticism doesn't sit well with fellow Republicans, at least in the House Republican Conference, that there are others who've accused you of all sorts of things regarding Israel, regarding the state of Israel, regarding the Israeli government, regarding Jewish Americans. Are you anti-Semitic?
They're trying to tell you that it's anti-Semitic for me to expose the fact that the Republican Jewish coalition has spent millions of dollars in this race.
What a bad faith question, right? Are you anti-Semitic? Just because, that is a bad faith question. How can you ask someone that? Crazy.
That a dual citizen, Miriam Adelson, who even Trump says is more loyal to Israel than the United States, has spent millions of dollars in this race. Those are mere facts. And it's really...
It's a yes or no. Are you anti-Semitic or not?
Oh, hell no.
Okay.
I'm hell no anti-Semitic. But here's the danger that AIPAC runs. They've been too cute by a half. They've tried to get Mike Johnson, and he's willingly done this, conflate in resolutions on the House floor that anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. Or even worse yet, that if you don't support Benjamin Netanyahu's war in Gaza, then you're anti-Semitic. That's absolutely false. And it does Jewish Americans a big disfavor to equate the two.
You got to wonder what that kid from CBS...
I apologize to cut off Tucker here, but really, I have to question, right? Why would he ask that? I wonder why Massie didn't ask him. Why do you ask? No, I'm not. Why do you ask? Is there something I've done that gave the impression that I am?
Fox News is being paid? And does he ask himself, is it worth it? So he of course, asked the question to Massie, which is not a question, it's slander posing as a question. Are you an anti-Semite? There's no evidence Massie's an anti-Semite. He's never said anything, not one thing, anti-Semitic, ever, because he's not an anti-Semite. Are you an anti-Semite? To which Massie says, no, actually, the Republican Jewish Coalition is spending millions to beat me because I don't believe in sending more money to Israel to fund their genocide against the Palestinians. He doesn't say that, but that's what this is about. Should the United States government pay for a genocide? No, would be the answer for most people. But the reporter doesn't even listen to it. Are you an anti-Semite? Yes or no? To which almost was Massie said, well, yeah, well, I'm an anti-Semite, but I mean, what? Are you an anti-Semite? So the reporter gets to say it twice. Anti-Semite, anti-Semite. When Massie's critique of our foreign aid package to Israel has nothing to do with Judaism, Jewish ethnic identity. It has no connection whatsoever to blood libel or well poisoning or any of the...
Dans un lit, on passe un tiers de notre vie. Autant choisir le bon. Structube, j'adore.
Vous achetez une auto usagée? Obtenez un rapport d'historique de véhicule Carfax Canada. Pourquoi? Il n'y a personne qui dispose d'autant de...
Historical examples that are often dredged up to compare people like Thomas Massie to. You're a Nazi. He is in no sense a Nazi. In fact, he's an anti-authoritarian, unlike the reporter from CBS News, who's bludgeoning him over the head with slander. So you may say to yourself, well, of course, that's CBS News. And you may not even be aware that that was bought by a huge contributor to the IDF, the Israel Defense Forces. And part of the rationale, maybe the main rationale for having CBS News at all at this point, is to ask questions like that. If you didn't know those facts, you might think, well, that's just the mainstream media, the lamestream media, using the same tactics they always have: slander, innuendo, attacks posing as questions, not bothering to listen to the answer, totally uninterested in the reality of anything, pushing an agenda. And you'd be right. But what's so revealing is that it wasn't just liberal mainstream CBS News. It was what's often incorrectly described as the far right. The far right. Far right meaning, I don't know, anyone who's against mass migration who raises his voice or something. But that would include Mark Levin, someone who spent a lot of his life denouncing the lamestream media. And yet if you...
Honestly, at this point, what would you even say is far right at this point? Because I don't know anymore.
Listen to Mark Levin's critique of the Massie race. It's identical to the CBS News critique of the race, which is Massie has no valid points. It's impossible to imagine Massie could be opposing aid to Israel except out of personal hatred, animus, out of anti-Semitism. It's impossible to imagine any American could support something so crazy as not sending billions to Israel. So the only people supporting Massie must be radical jihadis.
Mind you guys,
here's Mark Levin.
Mind you guys, like it's literally 1 billion, a billy a day that it's costing the U.S. right now, taxpayers, $1 billion a day to continue the war in Iran. Just throwing that out there. So if somebody says, oh, let's not do that because we have many issues at home, then you're an anti-Semite, apparently. Make it make sense, yo.
I'm looking at the support from Massie. It's the most radical jihadis in our country. It is Democrats. It is Tlaib. I mean, think of it. It's Rand Paul. The reprobates, the miscreants, and I underscore the malcontents, are moving behind Massie. And they're raising tons of money. And Massie is supported by all the elements that support Hamas, Islamic Jihad, Hezbollah, Iran. Why is that? He's supported by all the American haters and Jew haters and many of the Christian haters in this country. Why is that?
They're Jew haters. They support Islamic Jihad. whatever that is. I mean, it's actually not, it's so ludicrous that it's funny. It's precisely what the CBS News guy just said to him. Well, clearly you're a Jew hater. You're an anti-Semite. And Massie is the perfect foil for this because he sincerely isn't. He doesn't even fully understand what the guy's talking about. No, I just don't think we should send money to a foreign country. They're mad at Massie. Why? One Republican out of 217 who hasn't taken money from the Israeli lobby. Why are they so mad at him? Why was it so important for the Israeli lobby to spend tens of millions of dollars to crush this guy?
I have to question, right? Like, how the heck did this guy even get in there in the first place? Because if we're meant to believe that, like, Israel is kind of controlling everything happening in the US and in politics, then how did Thomas Massie get in there in the first place? I'm just curious.
It wasn't stopping really the status quo in any way. He did help get some of the Epstein files released, and God bless him for that. He tried his hardest. But one man against 216 other members of his party is not going to get very far by definition, so why just leave him alone? Why force the issue? Why are they so mad at this guy? Why is Trump so mad at him? Why is Miriam Adelson so mad? And of course, the answer is because Thomas Massie was willing to say out loud that there is an Israel lobby. There is a foreign country whose supporters in the United States, in positions of prominence, are making campaign contributions purely on the basis of what's good for a foreign country. Their loyalty is not to the United States, it's to a foreign country. Well, that's just true. It's just a fact. But you can't say that. Why can't you say it? Well, because it's true. That's why. If it was a lie, if you were claiming the earth was flat, they'd ignore you. But precisely because it is true, it's the truest thing. In fact, it's the definitive fact in American politics. You're not allowed to say it. And he did. Now, why do we say that's true? Isn't that an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory? Well, I don't know. Let's go to the Israeli press, which for all its many faults is a little bit more honest. It's a little bit less constipated in its use of language. They can kind of say things out loud because who's watching? Haaretz, the traditionally liberal paper in Israel, publishes an English language edition. And here was its headline yesterday. Look at this. There it is. The most consequential Republican primary for Israel is happening in Kentucky. Now, why would the Republican primary in the 4th district of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, a place doubtless most Israelis have never visited or can locate, why would that be so important for Israel?
Liez vos comptes récompense Triangle et récompense WestJet. Une dépense, deux récompenses.
Cluttered cloud storage? That's a lot to carry.
Well, because lots of things they tell you are not true are entirely true. First among them is Israel could not exist without the United States in its present form. Its ambitions would be at best vastly curtailed because everything outside its borders that Israel does is done with American tax dollars and with the backstop of the lives of American servicemen. So without that, the Greater Israel Project is done. Israel can exist in its 48 borders, maybe. It probably can't hold on to its 67 borders, which is to say, Gaza, West Bank, it's going to be a slog. Because the United States makes that possible. Israel's expansion is paid for and guaranteed by the United States taxpayer. And anyone who says that out loud, that is absolutely true. There's nothing more true in global politics than that. But anyone who says it reveals the game and must be destroyed. And that's why even in Israel, they know that beating Thomas Massie is priority number one. But on its face, that sounds like an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. A Republican primary in a minor Republican state, not even a state, a commonwealth, whatever that is being orchestrated from Israel with Israel's interests in mind, not America's interests? What are you, a Nazi? Not in Israel, you're not if you say that, because it's true. And they said it. So Massie says, well, it's AIPAC, the Republican Jewish Coalition. They're the ones opposing me. It's not a groundswell of support from within the district for my opponent, Ed, whatever his name is, Galrin or Galrine. No one even knows how to pronounce his name. He's not is he a real person? I don't know. His only real meaningful campaign pledge is to bring back the draft. The draft? How many people are in support of a draft? How many people of draft age are in support of a draft? None. Why would you want a draft? Do the Joint Chiefs want a draft? Would it make the military better if we had a draft? Why would we have a draft? When entire wars are fought with drones, do we need a draft? Ed Galrin or Galrine or whatever this composite figure is calling himself wants a draft. Can you think of a more totalitarian and less popular position for any person running for office to take than I want a draft? Vote for me and I will take your child and send him to go die for Israel. Is that actually a campaign pledge? He made that pledge. So Massie's point is this guy who refused to have a single debate with the incumbent, not one, who has no obvious support in the district, this guy only has a chance because AIPAC, from whom I've never taken a dollar, the only Republican who's never taken money from AIPAC is on his side. That's Thomas Massie's position, to which CBS News and Mark Levin and all the other dumb people in MAGA world, that's anti-Semitic. Really now? Let's see what AIPAC has to say about it. Minutes after Massie was declared the loser, AIPAC, the dreaded AIPAC, whose name we're not allowed to say, AIPAC sent out this tweet in public on Twitter. Here's what they said. We're quoting, pro-Israel Americans are proud to help defeat anti-Israeli candidates. Being pro-Israel is good policy and good politics. And good politics, exclamation point. In other words, the second Massie loses, AIPAC announces, we did it. We did it. We bumped this guy off. He criticized us. We're literally an unregistered foreign lobby who exists not to help the United States or its citizens, but a foreign country that couldn't exist without our aid anyway, whose aims are so far from ours that they are hurting us gravely, whose population may love Trump, but in a lot of ways hate Christian Americans. That's why they're spitting on nuns. That country doesn't like this member of Congress, therefore we're going to take him out. And by the way, we did.
So the question is, what are people going to do about it? Like, what can be done about it? What recourse do we have in a case like this where we're getting foreign interference?
Oh. So in other words, AIPAC is saying out loud something that if you said out loud might get you fired from your job or investigated by the Trump DOJ, which, by the way, has just announced a multi-city anti-Semitism tour led by Leo Terrell, the chief of anti-Semitism enforcement or something, a Fox News contributor with, I think, 11 IRS liens against him over more than 10 years, a guy who's sort of wonder, like, how'd you get into federal service if you have a problem paying federal taxes? We'll leave that between him and the IRS. Maybe he'll get his own exemption from IRS audits. We'll see. But that guy is leading a tour of the United States to try and do something with the imprimatur of the Department of Justice, which is to say people with guns, about the most pressing problem in this nation, which is criticism of Israel. Because yes, criticism of Israel is now officially defined as anti-Semitism. So when they tell you you're committing anti-Semitism, what they're saying is you're critical of a foreign nation, and that's now a crime.
Logic then. By that logic, does that mean that every time DJT talks crap about other countries and he's anti that country? With that logic, like, I mean, you should be able to criticize people constructively, of course, and not be labeled with like some bad word like that. Like, that's just shaming, right? Where you have no points to make, then you start to throw insults and shame at people.
Daniel? And rather than explain to you why it's so important and so good for you and the grandchildren you hope to have to support Israel, like, you should get on board. This is a great deal. Israel's awesome. Here's how they help us. Here's why you should be all in on Israel. Here's why the thousands of children they've murdered in Gaza deserve to be killed. because they were future terrorists. Make your case. If you have a case, make it. Tell us what you think. Instead of doing that, the Trump administration is taking the position that noticing is hate. Just noticing it. That's hate. It's anti-Semitism. It's a crime. That's the official message from the Department of Justice, which is using your tax dollars to intimidate you into shutting up about something that AIPAC is bragging about publicly.
I know, it's kind of funny. Like, it's funny because it's true, right? Like, they are literally using our tax dollars to intimidate us, pretty much. Like, we pay for the police and like all their fancy vehicles that they use, and they hide behind things to try and catch us speeding, to try and catch us rolling a stop sign, right? To really police us. So we pay to get policed, but then I'm like, can you guys also police like the government officials that we've elected to serve us and make sure that they're actually doing that? No. That's just for you guys, the plebes, as they call us, right? The plebs. Is it plebs? Plebeians? Disgusting, really.
It's hard to know what this is. I mean, clearly it's not a sincere effort to reduce anti-Semitism. If you're going to gin up anti-Semitism, if you're going to make people feel bitter, if you wanted people to blame their problems on Jews, whoever they are, this is exactly what you would do. Of course. So it's not an effort to reduce anti-Semitism, and you wouldn't have Leo Terrell, the Fox News contributor, with 11 IRS liens against him. That's your public servant, really? You wouldn't have that guy leading a multi-city tour to screech at you about how you're a bad person for not liking Israel. And by the way, possibly a criminal for not liking Israel. You wouldn't attack the only truly sacred right this country protects, which is the freedom of speech, on behalf of a foreign country if you were trying to eliminate anti-Semitism. Of course not. This is something else. This is a humiliation exercise. This is designed to let you know that there is now a caste system in place under which skepticism of one group is a lot more serious than skepticism of another group. Another word for this that was very common on Fox News, and in fact it emerged many times from Donald Trump's mouth, was identity politics. That's identity politics. We should instead have politics based on...
That right there is really interesting, right? It's a very dangerous, slippery slope. Because it looks like, from what Tucker is saying here, it sounds like they're kind of like rubbing it in our faces now. Like, what are you guys going to actually do about it? Like, we have your government. We have control. What are you going to do about it? That's what it looks like at this point. It's no longer covert. It's now overt. And what can you do, really? Because, yeah, we have the police that we pay, like we pay for them to make sure that we don't ever step out of line. So, yeah, it's a pretty brilliant system that they have set up for us. A brilliant cage, if you call it that, where we actually pay for our own prison guards.
Citizenship. If you're a citizen, you are equal to me under the law. There are no distinctions beyond that. God may make distinctions beyond that, but we're not God, we're a government. And in our government, the people own the country, they are shareholders in this enterprise, and you treat them all the same until proven otherwise. That's our justice system. You can criticize anyone you want equally. Every American citizen is allowed to use the same words,
all equal under the eyes of the
regardless
law.
of what his parents look like, because we don't have castes, because we're not India.
This is Pocket. I never go anywhere without it. At the tap of a button, it records and creates.
We reject identity politics. That was the promise. That's why BLM was wrong. All of a sudden, you had to worship black people like gods rather than just treating them like friends or neighbors or citizens or just people, because that's what they are. That's what every person is, just a person. Good on a good day, bad on a bad day. Smarter, taller, richer, poorer.
Absolutely well said by Tucker, right? Like, we don't want any of all these identity politics, like he said. So whether you're like BLM or whatever it might be, like, you're just a human. We're all humans. And from one human to another human, we should be able to communicate with each other without being shamed or labeled into like a negative name, right? But I want to hear from you guys in the chat, guys. Let's talk about it. What do you think about this Thomas Massie incident? And what do you accredit it to? Do you think that like it's from what he said, or you think it's performance based? Let's talk about it in the chat. Be sure to give this video a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.